Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. Um, Sorry for the no audio version, no audio recording kind of thing. I want to make it clear I don't mean to do that. Um, what happens is my settings get reset when my computer decides I want to update, and I forget about it, and I try to record, and I realize about halfway through the video, or like this last time, most of the way through the video, that I'm gonna be honest with you. The entire video had to either be scrapped or uploaded without the audio and play like a silent movie. Hopefully, you guys find it a little bit entertaining. Maybe you guys can just play some music in the background and watch me die over and over again. That's basically what happens in that video. I die all the time. So I want to comment on something that my pastor wrote. I won't give his name or his wife's, but I'm going to basically talk about what he said, and I'm going to summarize it. He explained, and I both agree and disagree with him at the same time. You can do that. It's quite easy, actually. Um, he told a story about him and his wife, and how his wife is a vanilla person. Okay, but he has an undiagnosed chocolate addiction. Okay, and here's where I agree with him. Your differences can indeed make you better, a better couple. You can balance each other out. He had this whole cute little thing about how one of their favorite restaurants serves ice cream and it's half chocolate, half vanilla in a swirl. And I agree that that can be a thing, and that can, it's a cute little story, but he almost implied that, hang on for 2 seconds. Sorry about that, guys. I had to take care of some stuff. But he pointed out that the differences balance each other out, which I agree with. However, he kind of tried to point out that, or tried to say, I think that there is no one, or at least he implied that. People say, oh, there is no the one. I disagree. I disagree. I think there's a halfway point between everything. And what I mean by halfway point, I believe that yes, there is a person out there that was specifically made for you. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think they're going to be the opposite gender version of you. I don't think that it's going to be just the perfect version of what you think your love will be. I think it is going to be the person that you're supposed to be with, and there might be some differences and there might be some similarities. And you might have to get over those things to grow together. And the Bible makes it clear you are supposed to grow together as individuals. That's why this let's split up for irreconcilable differences, to me, it doesn't work. It definitely doesn't work. So I will say, and the reason I think absolutely that there is a one out there, personally, I've talked to y'all, I've said publicly on this channel, I have had dreams of family and family life and that kind of thing. I've seen the same woman every time that I've dreamed about this. I've seen the same woman. And when I say the same woman, I mean the same. I haven't actually seen her face, but I've seen her smile. And you know as well as I do that I've told you I believe that I found that smile in the real world. I don't know who she is. But I just pray. Hang on. Do what I can, and I'm just going to pray that she comes back, and she comes back single. I'm going to wash my hands, and I'm going to keep going. But that's all I can do. And I pray, Lord, if it's not her, if it's not the person I'm supposed to be with, then bring her to me. Let me forget these feelings. But I really do think that what I saw was her, whoever she is, and that is because I was literally praying over my failed attempts at a relationship, And as I was praying, Lord, the next one that comes up to me had better be the person I'm supposed to be with, because I can't deal with this anymore. Because I'm so afraid of meeting her one day and not having anything left to give, because other people have taken it all and broken it, and I haven't had time to heal, or I wasn't able to heal because there wasn't anything left. No, I'm not saying that if you're already married and you find somebody that you think is your soulmate that you can just divorce. No, the Bible makes that perfectly clear. If you are married, you stay married to that person. But I do believe that there is I don't want to say perfect, because there's not a perfect person. Everybody's going to be flawed. Everybody's going to have issues. And really, you want to know what? Personally, I missed a lot of chances because I went and I put somebody on a pedestal. And that was my problem for years. And because I put people on a pedestal, I thought of them as perfect or unattainable. And in fact, thank you. Sorry about that, guys. Somebody was asking me questions at the side, but it wasn't too important. I will tell you now that caused me to miss quite a few chances. I also could not read people well because of the way that I was before certain events took place. And I think that was kind of my downfall for a while. And I really wish I could go back and undo some of those mistakes. So, really, those are the two pieces of dating advice for Christians that I would give you is number one, listen to God. In fact, let me go back to the beginning of first pieces of Christian advice that I would give you is the first piece would be keep a journal. When you study, if you feel like you're hearing God talk to you, write it down. Write it down, and when you write it down, compare what you hear to the scriptures, because that still small voice will never tell you anything that contradicts the Word of God. If he tells you something that contradicts the Word of God, you're going to be in trouble because that's not God talking. Um, but if he tells you to do something, do it. And it may hurt. It may hurt. Um, if I had taken a journal, I would have recorded things that he said to me that were personal that I didn't remember it until much later in life, and I probably would have been a lot better off. probably would have been way better off. But also, when it comes to Christian dating, don't make the same mistakes I did. Uh, I thought of every woman that I met that I was attracted to as unattainable, and I put them on a pedestal. You can't do that and be successful in dating. You can't do that as a secular person and be successful in dating. Um, if I had done these two things in life, I might be number one, a lot further along in certain healing processes than I am now, and I might, if I had kept a journal and listened to the Father more and taken a few more chances and actually uh not followed my heart, but uh tried to date when people wanted me to, when people were asking me to date them. And yes, there's been a couple that have asked. Um, and a few that would have gladly gone out with me had I understood what they were saying. Um, I would have probably been hitched already with a couple of kids, but I didn't understand how to read people. And that's one thing you need to learn is learn how to read people. One of my biggest fails that I um talk about, not my biggest fail. I won't share that here because honestly, that is a long story that could go on for hours or at least an hour. But one of my biggest fails is there was a young lady that I inadvertently asked for a date a year in advance. It was a very special occasion. I'll just say it. It was junior prom, and I asked her to the senior prom. And she responded with, I don't know, I might have a boyfriend. And I thought that was a maybe. I didn't think anything of it, so I kept asking throughout the year. She kept responding with the um, same answer. I don't know, I might have a boyfriend. And I didn't realize it at the time, but now I realize she was trying to get me to ask her out for something sooner. And had I known that, had I been able to understand what she was actually saying, I might have asked her out to a movie that the following night or whatever, or had lunch or dinner or something like that. And it was because I didn't know how to read people. So learn to read, folks. Learn to read people. Learn to understand body language, and learn to understand the riddles. I hate using that, but that's the only way I can think of to do it. That's the only way I can think of to explain what I'm saying. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind and keep that in your brain cap. I just want to make sure that message gets out there. And if you're in the area of Arkansas, places like that, um, be careful. There are storms in my area, in the area of where I call home. So be careful if you're in that area of storms and things. Definitely stay safe, seek protection. Uh, put up my YouTube channel and watch some videos in your sub basement if you got it, or in your bathtub, or however you want to stay safe. And have a great night. And I hope you take that message to heart. You know what? I'll tell you something else before I go. This is something that just crossed my feed as I'm watching Facebook. Okay, I normally really hate just commenting on social media, but I gotta say this. Okay, apparently this Tesla vandal who calls themselves trans, uh, they allegedly threw Molotov cocktails at cars, and they live with their mom and call themselves baby. And basically, this is guy, a guy who calls himself Lucy Grace Nelson, also called Justin Thomas Nelson, and they're accused of hurling incendiary devices at a Tesla dealership in Loveland, northern Colorado, and vandalizing the business and vehicles on multiple occasions with graffiti and of a hateful and offensive nature. Basically, I'll tell you this: they spray painted 1940s German uh, memorabilia onto the cars. That's messed up. But that is, I will say, my biggest issue with today's world and how crazy things are in the dating scene. Dagnabbit. My upload is not working because they want to do crazies. Yep, they want to do crazies. Okay, it's premiering now. Great. Um, so I will continue with this now that I know everything is up. I apologize for the crazy of everything and how I had to do this, but I had to do this properly. and I absolutely did that because I like y'all. I think y'all are awesome for subscribing. If you are seeing this and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Please do so. We'll reconvene in that end, but you guys know how I feel about the idea of there is no the one. I think that's shallow thinking. I think it's a both and situation. I believe there is a the one, but I also believe that if you have not if you are married and you suddenly find someone who you think is the one, you don't get to run off. Sorry, you just don't. And some people say, "Oh, are you saying if I don't love my spouse, I have to stay with them?" Yes, because love is not a feeling, it's an action and it's a choice. Yes, there are emotions attached and they fluctuate. I'm fully aware that when I get married, I may want to tear my wife's head off every once in a while. But am I going to leave my wife just because I don't feel the same way about her, whoever she turns out to be? No, because I prayed for her. I saw her in dreams. I prayed for her. I wrote songs for this woman, whoever she turns out to be. I've written, if things are right, stories, uh, and all kinds of things. So it's not that I'm putting her on a pedestal. It's just that I've actually wanted to be for so long a husband and a father. I'm not going to give that up just because my emotions aren't gonna be, you know what I'm saying? My emotions aren't exactly aligned with how I felt in the past. I'm not going to see somebody from a distance and say I would prefer to be with whoever because that's not how I roll. That's not how we need to roll as a society. Um, don't get me wrong. You need to deal with your emotions. You do. You can't act like they don't exist. That's another fallacy that some Christians actually do. That you can't ignore them. You have to deal with them in the biblical way. you know? And dealing with them in the biblical way is sometimes literally just saying, you know what, I acknowledge these feelings, but I'm going to see where they come from. Because the problem with feelings is they can come from God, they can come from you, or they can come from the man downstairs. Yes, that they can, if you let them, they can play with your emotions. That's where lust comes from. That's where this whole idea of looking at women in their birthday suits, let's put it that way, to keep it YouTube friendly, comes from. Um, and we're not going to say that looking at women on a base level is not something that we do as people, and especially as guys, you know. I'm not going to say it's not something that happens from time to time, because it's obviously something that's going to happen from time to time. You know, you see an attractive young lady, especially if you're single, you kind of look, you know, not gonna lie. Um, Especially if the girl is single at the time, you kind of look a little more. Um, you know, that's kind of how things go. It's just kind of natural, and I'm not saying that it's right. I'm saying it happens. We have to acknowledge that, but we also have to control it as people, because it's not something that we need to do as Christians. We need to control our, like I said, our fleshly desires, as they like to call it. And I say this as somebody, I will fully admit it. I have, because, and it's mostly and partially because I don't want to say it's all because I'm alone, but it's partially because I am alone. I haven't had any experience romantically, and I want it. I do. I want it. Um, but it just kind of hasn't happened for me yet at 32. I've been close, like I've mentioned in this video before, and sometimes I've been so close, all I had to do was say, "Yeah, sure." But I honestly, during that particular period, I was shy, and I thought for half the time that I could have said, "Yeah, sure." Um, that this particular person was joking, and because there was an incident just before it happened of people joking, and I thought they were just kind of adding to the fire. And the only reason I found out she wasn't joking was I met the person later. Uh, I met I met the person later, and they tried to pursue the possibility of a relationship with me again. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I at that point had not really thought about the possibility, and I wanted to think about it more. And I wanted to decide how I felt about this particular person. And by the time I found out that I actually liked this person, it was too late. And what I should have went and done was I should have talked to the person that invited her over, and I should have said, "Okay, here's what you need to do. You need to let me um have her number, and I'll call her and I'll explain and I'll apologize, and hopefully we'll be able to work something out and actually try things." But it may have been at that point in time too late, because I'm gonna be honest, I told a big lie. And since I told that big as soon as I told that big lie, I regretted it like the very next day, because I realized I should have been more honest. And it's one of those things that I consider it to be my greatest failure. And I don't really talk about it in detail because I don't need to share it in detail. But to be completely honest, uh, I want to go back in time and smack 16-year-old me and 13-year-old me both in the face. However, that is not the first thing I'd do with the time machine. I would actually go back in time to 12-year-old me and teach 12-year-old me what 12-year-old me should have needed to have learned from the get-go. Um, to start himself on some of this journey that I've been on. So that's all about regret, I would say. And that's what I'm going to title this episode. I'm going to say all about regret. Um, and that's what I'm talking about tonight, because that's and do me a favor, if you're reading this, if you're listening to this, tell me what your biggest regret is. I need to know. I has to know. What is your biggest regret? What would you do differently if you could go back in time and change a part of your life? You had full power, no negative consequences, by the way. I ain't pulling no butterfly effect shit on you. I mean, honestly, you can limit it to one mistake if you want, but any mistake. Two, any mistake that you want to fix. So mine are: one, mine are one, tell 12-year-old me what 12-year-old me needs to know to start on this healing journey um, sooner. Teach him from the get-go. And from the get-go, I would smack 13-year-old me and 16-year-old me in the face. Be like, hey, here's what you need to do in this situation. It's gonna bust you up later. You're gonna wish you had tried. You'd given it a try. So give it the old college try. Really, really consider this, and don't just shrug it off, because these are the decisions that make or break you. Um, and people around you might not be a fan of this at the moment, but in the long run, it's not in this area other people that you need to make happy. It's yourself and it's Jesus. It's this whole thing, it's between you and Jesus, and you need to be talking to Jesus about this, not considering what other people might or might not think. And I think if you talk to Jesus, he'd tell you to go ahead and give it a go. And that is where I'm going to actually end this, and I'm going to reiterate the question below. What would you do differently if you could? And I literally mean, if you could go back and you could change any mistake, any failure, any crazy thing that you would fix, anything that you regret. I know people say, oh, but your mistakes make you who you are. No, they don't. They do, but they don't. Because sometimes you learn something from mistakes, yes, but you know that you know that you know that you would do things differently if you could, and you know you'd be a lot better off. And I definitely would save a few lives. I would take, there are things that were accidents that I know were accidents, but if I could go back in time, I'd say to specific days, I would say, okay, I'm going to go here. I'm going to take this item out of this person's hand. No accidents will happen, and they'll still be with us. I would start prepping people to fight against certain diseases that would have killed them. Um, like I would have said, okay, this has been proven or will be proven in the future to kill this disease, or at least part of this disease. Maybe if you listen to this, it will help you. Maybe if you do these things, it will help you. Um, So hopefully I will be able to would be able to save some lives. Now there are some people that I probably wouldn't be able to save, and there are some people that I probably, if I told myself what I know now, I wouldn't be able to meet, but I'd probably still want to meet them. Um, so this is what I would ask. What would you change? What would you change? Would you change anything? Some people would be like, I wouldn't change a thing because my mistakes make me who I am. And I can understand that viewpoint. But to me, you're not your mistake. To me, you are your soul, you are your spirit, you're your whatever. You're the center of your being. And any attempt to be anything different, any attempt to be um, defined by your mistakes, I think it holds you back in the long run. I think you make a mistake, yeah, you learn from it. You ask the Lord, hey, what should I take away from this mistake? And then tell it, you gotta learn, hey, I'm gonna learn what the Lord wants me to learn from those mistakes. And I'm going to move on. And that's what you gotta do. You've got to move on when you learn what you have to from your mistakes. And when I say move on, I mean literally, you've got to try and forget your mistakes. Now, you need closure a lot of times. Like, do you think it once I get closure from something, I'm going to keep reliving it? No. One of these days, I believe there are some people I'm going to sit down with. I'm going to tell them, hey, this hurt. Hey, you hurt me in this way. Like, for example, I'm praying over this mystery person, right? I'm hoping to find them. But Am I going to, once I find them, am I going to be angry at them? No, I'm going to be happy because hopefully they will be single. Hopefully they will be available. And that is my hope. If not, hopefully I'll be able to forget and move on. But do you think whoever this mystery person is, it, we're going to be moving forward without some form of talk and say, hey, why didn't you reach it and tell them, hey, I'm going to ask them, I was on Facebook. You knew I was on Facebook. You knew my name. Why didn't you reach out? You know and I'm going to tell them, I'm going to say, surely you know some of my family because I'm going to be honest with y'all. If y'all knew my real name, it'd be real easy to find me. It's part of the reason I use an alias. Um, because my family name around these parts is quite common. They say everybody knows the so-and-sos. Everybody's related to the so-and-sos in some way. Um, we're more common than dirt. um, that's why I use the alias that I do. So I'll say, hey, you knew, at least on some level, who my family was. Why didn't you reach out? If you really wanted to know the answers that you sought, and you really felt something, why didn't you reach out? What? But am I going to um dwell on it? No. Now that being said, they are going to get an earful about, do you know what you've done? Do you know how many stories, how many songs, how many projects have come back into my brain because you decided to flirt and then walk away? Do you know what? And I'm gonna be honest, if they aren't, I hope this isn't the case, but if they are not single, okay, if they turn out to be taken, I'm gonna say, uh, do you realize how by flirting and walking away, you made me feel completely head over heels again? Or head over heels for you? And yet you walked away and I didn't see you for a long time? Yeah, we're gonna have that talk because it's important that if we move forward, that talk is had. I am that I believe it's that important that that talk get had and emotions are dealt with. But once they're dealt with, let it go. Now, you may not always be able to deal with emotions in the typical way, right? You may not be able to deal with emotions by um, you might end up being in a situation where you have to say over and over until those feelings go away of regret and heartache and whatever, or feelings of guilt. Say you've lied to somebody and you've now lost them, they're in the ground. Um, or they're up there with Jesus, or they're downstairs with the devil, whatever you believe. Of course, I'm a Christian. I believe that if somebody's saved, they go upstairs, and if they're not, they go downstairs. That's where I sit. Um, but you may have to take a chair, put the photo in the chair, or put a dressmaker's dummy, or just act like they're sitting there, and you may have to confess everything that you've told, every lie that you've told to them. You may have to confess whatever feelings you had. If it's feelings of, man, I should have spoken to them, I should have said what was on my mind, I should have told them absolutely that I was in love with them, whoever they are. Um, you might have to sit across from an empty chair and just talk, or you might have to write poetry and songs and stories of those feelings and actually have those emotions come out in those works. Or you may just have to write a letter. There's all kinds of ways you can do it, but you may have to do it in an untraditional manner. It's important that they get dealt with, though. For example, okay, prime example from the literature, The Christmas Box. It's a story about a young woman and their husband and their daughter being 2 years old. Um, they said, don't actually, like, they're given free reign of the house except for one room and the attic. And eventually, the little girl actually goes into the one room she's not supposed to go into, and she's like, "It's okay. You can she can go in there. I'm okay with that. She seems very well behaved." And she says, uh, "Just don't go in the attic." And she doesn't go. One time they actually go in the attic, and there's nothing in there except for a box. And it's a box with a manger scene, and it's very ornately carved, and it's a beautiful, beautiful story. It's by Richard Paul Evans, I think. Um, I won't give you any spoilers, but um, actually, you know what? Spoiler alert, I will. The box contains letters written to a baby boy who died, and it was her baby. She died of cancer, and what she said was, when I die, burn the contents of that box. And they burned it after she had guarded it so carefully all those years. But before they burned it, they actually read it, and they ended up crying over the box and the contents of it. And they kept the box, but they burned the letters. I don't know what they actually ended up storing in the box after. Um, But that's what I mean when I talk about those feelings need to be dealt with. You can't just ignore them. You can't say that they don't exist because they exist whether you like it or not. And it's proven that our emotional stuff that we hang on to, it causes our physical health to deteriorate. And it's not good for us to hold on to things. And that's part of the reason I really don't like um, the way I've handled some things in the past with my emotions. I just don't. We don't handle our emotions as well as we ought to. And I'm not saying seek counseling because um I'm not saying counseling is all bad, but a lot of counseling is just affirming your feelings and that those feelings exist and you have to acknowledge them, but you also have to deal with them. And a lot of times they don't really tell you how to deal with it. They just let it lay there because they feel like once the feeling's acknowledged, it goes away. And sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. But at the same time, I've acknowledged feelings within myself and I haven't been able to let go of those feelings. Um, for very much. You have to, when you, okay, this is the biggest way to help in this situation. I have said in previous videos that I've been depressed before. I was depressed for a long time because I was unemployed for 4 years, and I hurt a lot. And I had other things that caused me to hurt too. Things that I wish I could go back and tell my past self that it will be okay. Um, and it was all because I had a negative view of myself. And that started in early teenage years with my own appearance and my own well being and what I thought of myself at the time. I have to tell you one of the biggest secrets that I learned, and I learned this not too long ago. I started learning this in 2015, so it was 10 years ago that I started learning this. I had to learn how God sees me. And that's what a lot of Christians do not understand. You have to understand how God sees you. And I'm not talking about the traditional teaching of the church, okay? Some of the traditional teaching of the church is off. And one of the prime examples is where it says our righteousness is filthy rags, okay? Um, that if you are not a Christian, if you are not a saved individual, is true. You are filthy rags in God's eyes. The best parts of you are like filthy rags. But if you are a Christian, if you are a follower of Christ, you are bought with a price. You are bought with a price worth more than all the gold in the universe, the very blood and life of the Son of God, who gave his own life to buy you. That is the absolute greatest compliment that anyone can give. And it is the greatest price that anyone can pay. And he tells you that you are loved, you are wanted, that you have a purpose and a plan. I'd give all kinds of references if I could at this moment, but I'm just speaking generalities of what is in the scripture. You can look this up. You have a plan, you have a purpose. You are absolutely loved to the moon and back by God, by his son, and he made you well. Now, that does not mean there aren't things he wants to change. He wants to change because, yes, while he designed you, while he made you, while he formed you in the womb, this world is touched by sin. And when it's touched by sin, things come out imperfect, even from birth, even from before birth. There are people who have strokes in utero. There are people who have strokes in the NICU. There are people who have all kinds of bad things happen to them because of medical treatments and stuff. And that ain't God's will. That's the sin cursed world or the devil directly working in people's lives. You really want to know God's perfect will for your life? You look at heaven. When you get back to heaven, there's no sickness, no disease, no poverty, no hunger. You know, that's the perfect will. So that's what he wants for everybody. He absolutely loves everybody to the moon and back. And if you look at it through that lens, you understand that, hey, you're worth something. That guy down the street who ain't got two nickels to rub together, he's worth something. Help him out if you can. If not, just pray for him like you would anybody else and go on. That guy down at the other end that's got a mansion, he's worth something too. He's probably doing something that the Lord's got a plan for him to do. And if he don't, guess what? He'll if he ain't, guess what? The Lord will deal with him later. You know, we're all accountable for what we do here on this earth eventually. If he gets up to the pearly gates and he's saved, he's going to be let in just like everybody else, but he's going to be sat down. He's going to say, and Jesus is going to say, hey, um, I gave you all that money. I wanted you to do something with it. I gave you an idea. Why didn't you try? Why did you use your money for your own pleasure instead of what the rest of what I was telling you to do? I don't mind you having fun with it, but do what I tell you to do first, and the fun can come later. Um, I, I don't have much in the way of funds right now, but I try to be fiscally responsible for what I have. Um, and y'all will say, well, um, how do you try to be fiscally responsible? I save. I put money in every week. Or no, not every week, every pay period, which is about every other week, and I put the same percentage in. Is it enough? Not really, but it's what I feel. And I'm not anti. I'm not anti. How do I put it? I'm not anti-change. You know, I. How do I put it? I change for God, but I think a lot of people try to change themselves for other people. For example, plastic surgery. Okay. Sometimes plastic surgery is necessary. It's got its reasons, okay? Um but I've met some people. They thought about I had a friend who I wanted to date for a time, okay? Um she didn't see me that way. And in the long run I figured out, you know what? It's probably a good thing. It's probably a good thing that we didn't date because I found out she was a raging leftist. You know how early on I said that m- me- if a conservative and a leftist try to get together and they don't both come to the table and say we're going to let Jesus rule, and I may be wrong on some things and you may be wrong on some things, but we're going to let Jesus rule and have his say in our relationship. And she may have been willing to do that had we got together, but the more I see from her, and I still consider her a dear friend. I absolutely love her as a sister in Christ, and she is now married with a child. You know, if she's watching now, she knows exactly who she is, and I value her as a friend and as a sister in Christ, but I am very glad now that we did not date because we would have ended up hurting each other very badly and would not have been friends in the end, I don't think. Um, so basically, we were better friends, and I realize that now. As much as it hurt, like I was busted over her for quite a long time. Um, because I thought she was an amazing person. We talked mainly about the fun stuff of um that we liked. We were both really into Disney. I still like Disney. I think she still likes Disney to some extent. She still likes some of the Mardi Gras stuff um that we talked about and some of the cultural things that we've seen over the years, and we still talk about that, and I talk to her about my dreams and stuff and looking for this mystery person and praying about it and all the different visions that I've updated. Um by the way, mystery person, if you happen to be listening to this, come on back. You know, if you're in a relationship, get out of it. Or be willing to talk about some deep subjects for a moment or two. Um because you've got some stories to hear and you've got some emotions to hear about and uh, you've got some questions to answer because I I don't know exactly who you are or where you are. So, but we talk about that stuff. It's nice to have somebody to talk to about that with. She lives somewhere else in the state. I won't say where, but it's a big place. So if even if I said it, they probably would be safe. Um, but yeah, that's one of those things you don't see the end from the beginning, but the Lord knows, and the Lord knows, hey, y'all wouldn't have worked out, and He knows exactly why. So sometimes mistakes can be very beneficial, and I think that's where I'm going to end it. Yeah, some because this episode has kind of been about regret, compatibility, love, loss. We've covered all the basics here, guys. So again, for the last question, I want to know. I really do. What would you do differently if you could in your past? What would you do? Would you still be friends with that person who, in the end, broke your heart? Um, would you still be friends with that person who betrayed you? Would you would you ask that girl out? Would you ask to go on a date with that person? Um, would you seek treatment sooner for that injury that you kept putting it off because you were afraid of what the doctor might say? Um, would you be okay with not going to that party because it may have been fun, but you ended up with a hangover the next morning? You know, all of those different funny little questions. I want to hear your answers down below. Would you not take that job? I tell you, there's one particular job that I would not have quit until I found a new one, even though it might have hurt, because it hurt me a lot more not to have it. And I might have actually saved myself some trouble in the long run. So, there, that's what I'm gonna ask. What would you do differently if you could? What, where is your line? How would you draw it? What would you do? Where would you, what would you do differently if you could do something differently? Would you do anything? And if not, tell me why. And don't just give me the bull rush excuse of our mistakes make us who we are. You have to give me a good logical reason why you wouldn't make the change that might make your life a little bit better. So tell me in the comments below, what would you do differently?